Welcome everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Inshallah, today we'll continue our discussion that we have started last week about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his message. Again, I would like to remind you that we will be discussing this from the Risale Inner Collection, and the focus area will be on what this means to us as the humanity, and how should we understand his message in the way that um, what it explains to us, what his message explains to us, and why his existence and his mission really matters for the humanity and for the universe. And we talked about beyond any um, beyond any worldly laws or worldly peace or life. Um, it actually is something that is deeper, that tells us about our purpose in life. And inshallah, today we'll try to discover more of that from the 19th word from the Risale Inner Collection. Our speakers today will be Dr. Colin Turner from Durham, England, and Jazmi Yeniai, one of our imams in the Bloomfield Muslim Community Center in Bloomfield, Connecticut. And inshallah, I will be moderating the session. So the first part, inshallah, that I'll share with you is the third droplet. Inshallah, I'll read through this, and then we can, inshallah, discuss. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Third droplet. If you wish, come. Let us go to Arabian Peninsula, to the era of bliss. In our imaginations we shall see him at his duties, and visit him. Look, we see a person distinguished by his fine character and beautiful form. In his hand is a miraculous book, and on his tongue a truthful address. He is delivering a pre-eternal sermon to all mankind, indeed to man, jinn, and the angels, and to all beings. He solves and expounds the obscure riddle of the mystery of the world's creation. He discovers and solves the mystery of the universe. And he provides convincing and satisfying answers to the three awesome and difficult questions that are asked of all beings and have always bewildered and occupied minds. Where do you come from? What are you doing here? Where are you going? Inshallah, we had touched upon a few of these points last week about like connecting the dots. I would like to ask, inshallah, to our speakers a few things like, of course, understanding this part is one, but also uh, this is something many people before Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, especially the Prophet, the messengers, have addressed to some level, but like what should we think about Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as different or unique in this mission? Because it is not a new mission. It is something that is a continuation from Adam alayhi salam, from Prophet Adam, peace be upon him, all the way to Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So what would be also unique in this mission, and how should we understand this form? Brother Colin, would you like to set us off, inshallah?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's difficult really to actually gauge what it is about humankind at this juncture in history which sort of enables them to understand things about the creation possibly that weren't understood before, or in a way that hadn't been articulated before. Because we talk now about the Prophet ﷺ delivering a pre-eternal sermon. This is a sermon that had been delivered before, but it seems that now it's much more nuanced and maybe more comprehensive. He's announcing that with his prophethood, humankind has got an opportunity that it's never had before with which to address no less than the riddle of existence itself, the mystery of the creation of the universe. These things were always implicit in the previous messages, but now they seem to come center stage. You know, we're talking now about solving the riddle of existence, the mystery of the creation of the universe, you know, the puzzle of human existence, and all of these big existential questions that beleaguer us, you know, from the day that we open our eyes on the world to the day that we close them again when we die. Why are we here? Where are we from? What's our duty? Where are we going? What's going to happen to us? It seems for some reason that there is much more nuance, there is much more intentionality in a sense, to ask these questions, to answer these questions, to find answers to all of these existential puzzles. It seems to be articulated in a way and in a manner that didn't happen before, perhaps. You know, it wasn't this
Yeah.
comprehensive. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is that, I mean, I can feel what it is that makes the message different, but it's difficult to put one's finger on it, you know, and definitively say it's this, it's X, Y, or Z.
And it's interesting that you put that word like juncture, that juncture in the history. Like it's always, oh, there's also, I guess, the state of humanity at that state versus previous ages. Maybe something is different. I don't know. Brother Jasmine, would you like to comment on this part and maybe, what is maybe what do you think is like the state of human beings at that age that might be different than like previous ages? Because like we also see these like, I guess, detailed accounts of hereafter in the Quran, as opposed to more let's say like superficial. So like, is it the state of the humankind at that point, or is it something else? And also your general comments on this part.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Mustafa. Thank you, Dr. Colin, for your beautiful expression. Yes, foremost, I would like to express Imam Nursi's method here. He is inviting us to imagine, animating the Rasulullah's mission, going to that time, the era of bliss, the Asr Sa'ada. So imagining is helping us great, really. Considering ourselves at that time, maybe without imagining the conditions or the time of the Prophet Muhammad والسلام, maybe we may not really understand how his mission is effective. Became in very difficult conditions. He made a great job. He made a great duty. So he showed an extraordinary endeavor. Showed an is very strong iman, belief, and patience to the very tough people. So before Islam, the Arabian Peninsula, the people, they were very obstinate to their traditions. Yeah, very sticking. So conveying the message of Quran, he made a great effort. So although he suddenly emerged, for example, this is an interesting also, at 40 years old. So he did not have any preparation. So he made a great cause. He emerged with a great cause with Islam, maybe more comprehensively. Mustafa, you asked that point. So before Islam, maybe the other prophets, they brought the same message, but the humanity maybe wasn't ready to a comprehensive message. So with the coming of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi, so the humanity maybe got prepared to a comprehensive message, to understand the resurrection maybe more comprehensively, with the manifestation of all the beautiful asma. So his cause, his address is universal. The Prophet Muhammad alayhi, he's embracing the whole humanity, not like the previous prophets. They came to some nations, they came to some regions, but the Prophet Muhammad alayhi, he came to whole humanity, embracing whole humanity, to answering to all the questions of the humanity. So the unfolding the capacities, the qualities of human being, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is defining. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We have created human being in the most examined patterns. So how to unfold these most examined patterns? So with Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is showing with the message of the Prophet Muhammad, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing how to unfold those treasures, which is hidden in the human beings' capacities that Allah has given many abilities. So I understand that human beings are prepared for the emerging of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, so that they can fulfill the most excellent of patterns. Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Could I ask a question? Could I ask Brother Jesme a question, please?
Yes.
Brother, what do you feel is, there is clearly a component of human psychospiritual makeup collectively that at this time in history is deemed ready and mature enough to receive the message that was sent with the final prophet. So there is something in human makeup which is, has reached a kind of maturity and is able to withstand, possibly see it as withstanding the kind of questions that are being asked. And you've mentioned also resurrection. Resurrection isn't really accentuated in the previous messages in the way that it's accentuated in the final message. And if you think of a human individual, when a child is very, very small, you don't really talk very much to it about death and about what's going to happen after death. You wait until they're mature enough to be able to understand and to be able to grasp what it is. And I'm thinking, is it possible that humanity, if we see it as an individual, as a single individual, was deemed by God to be mature enough, perhaps, to cope with these questions and to understand them? I'm trying to put my finger on which point it is. And I think, guided by what Jesme said about resurrection, and also, Mustafa, what you said in your introduction about resurrection is accentuated quite a lot. We know that maybe a third of the Quran deals with the eschaton, the final days, and the resurrection and what comes afterwards, heaven and hell, to an extent that wasn't evident in scriptures which came before. So I'm wondering whether there's a correlation here between the amount of material that there is on the resurrection and the next world, and this point in the development of the human, the collective understanding, if you like, maturity.
And just to add to that question a little bit, I mean, does it have to be a certain, like an event in the human history, or is it more of like forgive the word, evolutionary process, right? It's like
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I don't think it's a particular event. I'm just, I'm likening, it's analogous to the growth of a child. When a child reaches a certain age, then there are certain questions that you can put to that child, and you will know that as the child becomes a grown up, an adult, they're able to intellectually cope with things that they may not have been able to cope with when they were younger. So I don't know, this is just an idea. I don't know whether we can analogize in this way and liken the whole of humanity to a single human being. I know Ustad Nursi does it a lot, but he does it with wise purpose. I'm just here just imagining what could be a solution to this, because, why is the Quran and the message of the Quran so different to previous messages, and at the same time it's reflecting this pre-eternal sermon that Ustad Nursi talks about? So it's different, and yet it's the same.
It comes to my mind that Imam Nursi, he is mentioning at the end of the resurrection, the 10th word, he's explaining resurrection with the beautiful asma. In the 12th truth, like 12 doors opening to the reality of resurrection, understanding the next world, very beautifully Imam Nursi he is showing us with Asma. So he is defining that the understanding the resurrection, the next world is understanding the whole Asma in their most highest form. So he is defining also in another part of the tafsir, he is understanding resurrection and great gathering. Hashr it can be achieved only seeing manifestations of the greatest name. Many asma is manifested in the doomsday, in the resurrection. So without understanding those asma, so the hashr cannot be understood well. So Imam Nursi is defining that Rasulullah he has shown all the beautiful asma in his self, and he has explained in the Quran. Yeah, Allah SWT has explained in the Quran by showing this in the life of the Prophet Muhammad SAW. The highest levels of the Asma Ilahiyya, the Isma Azam, every name, like for example, Allah is, he is giver of the life, so he is showing this in the resurrection in the most perfect way. So all humanity will be resurrected. So without understanding all the manifestations of Asma Ilahiyya, Hashr, the resurrection cannot be comprehended. So Imam Nursi is defining that as required by the wisdom of guidance. The former prophets did not teach their communities. So they were somewhat simple and primitive level. So they may not understand the resurrection of the dead at the highest level. So with Prophet Muhammad, Allah SWT is teaching humanity the highest level of the resurrection, the paradise with all the very beautiful descriptions he is defining, and the hellfire and so on. So maybe it's a kind of preparation to for humanity till the coming of the Prophet Muhammad got prepared, and the mindset also prepared, understanding the hereafter the more comprehensively. In previous prophets it wasn't so detailed.
Yeah, wow. So in other words, can we say that maybe it comes back to understanding the Asma'i Husna and God's beautiful names, and the extent with which we can understand that as the whole humanity can understand it, I guess, if to the level that it improves to the ability, I guess, cognitive abilities or other ways, I guess, that they are able to not on a personal level, of course, with like the whole humanity, with their, I guess, maybe start of some like intercontinental trades and things like that too, probably. But like probably comes back to your saying, understanding the beautiful names of Allah in everything in the universe that we are seeing, and that is kind of reached a point that people are able to grasp that better. Did I summarize your statements correctly?
So at the end of the 10th word, maybe we can remember it also. He is defining that this 10th word is not easy to understand. He is explaining the Asma Ilahiyya, 12 truth, 12 doors. He is using to understand this Hashr. So he is also attracting our attention. This is very difficult, but with the teaching of Quran, with the teaching of at this time the Risale, we are easily grasp the meaning of Hashr. So with the manifestation of the greatest name, through beholding, demonstrating the great deeds evident in the maximum manifestation of the greatest name of Allah, and the other names very beautifully explained in the 10th word. So we believe that as if we will leave it, as if it will happen without any doubt. We can believe, but without understanding those asma, so it will be very difficult to grasp it. Yes.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Thank you. Brother Colin, did you want to add anything here, or I can go to the next droplet as
No,
well?
you can. No, it's fine. I mean, that's a very
Okay.
interesting idea. You know, I still think that the maturity of humanity as a collective is connected with this. But you know, this exposure to the most beautiful names is surely going to be gradual. So, you know, maybe this is also, you know, this idea is complementing that idea. The names are more comprehensively manifested, and obviously our Prophet ﷺ is manifesting the names at the very, very highest degree, maybe more so than the previous prophets. Then, yeah, I think this all fits in.
Yeah, Jazakallah. Yeah. And by the way, as a reminder to the audience, feel free to ask your questions through the chat. You can send it to me. My name should be up there, Mustafa, as the moderator. And inshallah, we'll try to answer them by the end of the session. Okay, I'll go through the next section, which is a continuation of this message. Fourth droplet. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. See, he spreads such a light of truth that if you look at the universe as being outside the luminous sphere of his truth and guidance, you see it to be like a place of general mourning, and being strangers to one another and hostile, and inanimate beings to be like ghastly corpses, and living creatures like orphans weeping at the blows of death and separation. Now, look, through the light he spreads, that place of universal mourning has been transformed into a place where God's names and praises are recited in joy and ecstasy. The foreign, hostile beings have become friends and brothers, while the dumb, dead, inanimate creatures have each taken on the form of familiar officials and docile servants. And the weeping, complaining orphans are seen to be either reciting God's names and praises or offering thanks at being released from their duties. So here in this part, I guess we are going into like the details of the message and I guess if one word summarizes it, is probably transformation, and transformation of how we look at the universe. So in this sense, what would you like to say, maybe Brother Colin, about like the before and after? I guess this is probably a common theme in the Risale as well, like how to look at things before or without the light of truth or belief and after. And we see this theme, and I guess here is connected to Prophet ﷺ's message. How should we understand this, or is this really an effective method of looking at things? You know, or does this really capture what we should understand from his message?
Yeah, I think it does, because I think we should understand the Muhammadan light, you know, Nura Muhammadiyah, as the light of Tabyin, you know, the light of enlightenment. It's the light which, if you see before, the pages of existence had lots of strange shapes on them that couldn't be read. And this light illumines those strange shapes, and it allows us to see that these shapes are actually letters formed by the pen of the Creator, you know, as he authors the book of the universe. So when the Prophet is told Iqra, if we consider before the Prophet, it wasn't possible to read the book of creation and make sense of what was written, particularly in the place where the Quran was revealed, but also further afield. It had become very difficult to read the book of creation, and for lots of people impossible. And with the coming of the Prophet and the command Iqra, the task was not merely to recite what was written, it was to interpret, because Iqra also means interpret. In fact, it means interpret as much as it means read. And you have to bear in mind, there was nothing written on paper, you know, for the Prophet to actually recite when he was told Iqra. What the Prophet was told was he was told to interpret. And when he said that he didn't know how to interpret, and that the book of creation is uninterpretable, it was then that the answer came. And this is the key. The answer was Iqra bismi rabbik, read or interpret in the name of your Lord. This was what made everything light. Because what we're saying is the Prophet was given a key, he was given the hermeneutical key with which to unlock the book of creation. He was given a language, in fact, because to interpret something, you need a language. I don't mean just as a linguistic vehicle, but you need a conceptual language. And what the Prophet was hinting at, and what the Quran confirms, is that the creation can't really be understood unless it's interpreted in the name or names of God. Now, what this means, quite simply, and I'll give you an example,
Sure.
Is this. The creation of a snowflake doesn't make sense unless it's interpreted as something which is created by someone who possesses certain perfections, certain qualities, certain abilities at the level of absolute perfection. Because a snowflake requires knowledge, it requires artistry, it requires will, wisdom, power, vision, and so on, lots of different attributes. Hundreds, actually, are required for the creation of a single snowflake. And without those names, that snowflake doesn't make sense. It wouldn't exist, and it couldn't mean, it could not mean what it means now that it does exist. So before, it's meaningless. Now that we have the language with which to understand the snowflake, it means something completely different. So Iqra bismi rabbik means read the world, interpret the world with a conceptual language, which is provided by what I call the theology of the beautiful names, Asmaul Husna. These are a key which allow us to open up all of the writings and inscriptions on the page of existence and to make sense of what has been written. Before, you said before and after.
Yeah.
Before the Muhammadan light came to illumine these writings, they were covered in darkness. Everything was, in a sense, dead and meaningless. And then this new hermeneutical methodology comes along, this interpreting in the name of God. And this is nothing less than a solution to the riddle of the universe. This is what is different about the Quranic message.
I guess it kind of is connected to the previous droplet, which just comes before this in the text as well. And because it ended with those three questions, where do you come from? What is your duty here? And where are you going? And I think this part, it probably, as you alluded in the last parts of your talk, is it almost like this meaning, this whole transformation and this latter part of this text kind of explains our duty and our purpose in this life, like reading this. Can we say that? This is kind of like a partially our purpose in life, to read in God's name.
When you walk into a room at night, you come in from the street and it's dark, and you walk into your living room, and before you turn the light on, all you can see is just dark shapes in the room. And if you walk through that room, then you bump into things and you're confused. When you turn the light on, then everything becomes clear. You know where everything is. Everything is in its place, and you know how to navigate your way across the room. So with the Muhammadan light, everything is put in its place. Everything is explained. Everything is rationalized. Everything is justified.
Yeah.
And then you're able to navigate your way intellectually and emotionally and spiritually across the room, if you see the existence as a room. Although Ustad likens it to a desert, in the first word, he talks about crossing the deserts in the name of a tribal chief. The only way you can cross, you know this better than I do, the only way you can cross a desert safely, the Arabian desert, is if you cross in the name of a tribal chief. So if you meet problems along the way, someone who wants to kill you even, you say, no, I'm traveling in the name of such and such a chief, then you will be allowed to go on your way. The same is true of the desert of life. We navigate our way across the desert of life. The only way we can navigate safely and without confusion is if we look at everything in the name of God. Otherwise, it's meaningless.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Brother Jasmine, would you like to add something?
Yes, thank you, Brother Colin. Yeah, it was very expressive. Thank you for the elucidation of the meanings of the Book of Universe, Mustafa. Brother, I agree with the word transformation. Really, with the Prophet Muhammad (SAW), the humanity saw a transformation from meaninglessness to the meaning, seeing the real face of the universe. So with the truth of Iman, maybe we can say what is the light of truth. We can interpret as Iman, the manifestation of the Asma Ilahiyya with Islam, the six pillars of Iman, understanding the meaning of the universe. So we can see that everything becomes a brother, a friend for humanity, for every human being. We are not foreigners. We are not in this gigantic universe. We are not alone. So we understand that everything is our friend. Everything is our relative. With the light of the Iman, we understand. So it is illuminating, very beautifully, Brother Colin expressed, with by illuminating our world. So we see the real face of everything. So it's delivering us from the darkness. And not only human beings, also the whole universe is illuminated. Imam Nursi is mentioning that mighty beings like mountains, sea, they are, although they were appearing very horrendous things, very terrifying things, while being crushed under these delusions. So with the Iman, we can see the real meanings of them. They are not inanimate, they are not lifeless. Maybe they are glorifying Allah. They are showing the beautiful manifestations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we see how Iman is transforming our world from a very crushing, terrifying delusion to very beautiful feast for us, for every being in the creation Allah has created, and invited us to a feast, to an exhibition, to show His beautiful arts, to show His beautiful Asma Ilahiyya, and showing that everything is your relative. There is no strange condition for us. So there is no odd condition or foreign being. So everything is our relative. So with the eye of heedlessness, although it was a very terrifying condition, so we can see that with Iman, with the light of the Prophet Muhammad (SAW), he brought to humanity, we see the very happy and maybe it is giving us a kind of serenity to the heart, and we feel that the real humanity, being a real human being, can be achieved with this point of view. Otherwise, the other view, the view of misguidance, heedlessness of non-belief, it is decreasing the humanity to the lower than the animals. Yes.
And to clarify a little bit, like, this is practically the same condition, right? I mean, the same scenery that we see in the universe. That is what is being transformed. I mean, it is not really these two parts of this text isn't really two different places. It is the same beings that we see around us, like from animals to trees. The same beings change to this, and I imagine it is not really those beings that are changing; it's our perception of them, right? And I guess I don't know if it is like can we say that this light is actually gives us that perspective rather than, you know, I mean, or it is maybe the true state of things that we are gaining the perspective but can we say that what really matters is the perspective that it gives us, so that it is, because like Brother Colin gave the example of this light being in living room, you enter the living room and turn on the light. So that specific one has a meaning in terms of like a physical light hitting things, and making things clear. But in this case, it is almost like the human being state or perspective is the one that really makes sense, or makes things more clear. Can we say that?
I think you're absolutely right. You know, it's not a case of it's a case of seeing things differently. It's not a case of seeing different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you said, it gives us a perspective, and the things that were always there, but now maybe it goes to manay asmi, manay harfi. You know, now that we are able to attribute them to a creator, it makes them, in the true sense of the word, sensible. You know, it makes them give meaning to us. And we talked, I think, last week about the cherry tree. You know, if you look at the cherry tree and you see that all it is just a piece of wood that sometimes gives fruit, and that's it, you know, then if you read it again in the light of belief, then you see it as something which is expressing the riches of the creator, his abundance, his bestowment, his knowledge, his wisdom, his compassion, his power, all of these things. The cherry tree suddenly becomes a lesson for us.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes an instruction about the divine names. It teaches us about the divine names. And it also teaches us about the resurrection. You know, there are passages in the Risale Nur where Ustad talks about a tree, and you can get a whole theology lesson from it. You know, you can find about divine unity, you can find about even prophethood, you can find about the next world, you know, akhirah.
Yeah.
A tree then becomes something with endless meanings. And of course, trees are changing all the time. The message is changing all the time. It's not that the message is different, it's just different aspects of it become visible and tangible as time progresses. So a tree is not just a book, it's a book that's constantly being rewritten. Now, that's a very big difference looking at a tree like that than how we saw the tree before.
And like, can we maybe, it could be a challenging question maybe, but it is like, before or without the light of belief, isn't a cherry tree with flowers still a beautiful thing to look at? Like, how can we understand like this place of general mourning or ghastly corpses and orphans weeping at the blows of death and separation? Maybe that last sentence kind of maybe a hint, but like, isn't that like objectively a beautiful thing? Like, how does lack of belief make it a ghastly corpse?
Because
That,
when the cherry tree dies, then and someone is looking at the cherry tree, then there is regret because they're reminded of death and destruction. And it's actually painful. You don't want to think about it because the cherry tree dying reminds you that everything is dying, everything is going to be annihilated, and that brings up these ghastly images of you know, blackness and of eternal darkness. It is not actually objectively beautiful, as we know it's created beautifully, but
yes.
the very fact that people see it as objectively beautiful in its own right, that is the problem, because they're attributing the beauty to the tree. So when that beauty disappears, then they have no understanding, because where has the beauty gone?
Yeah.
We know that the beauty is of its creator, not of the tree itself, and therefore when the tree dies, it doesn't it doesn't hurt us in any way. It doesn't really affect us. It doesn't dismay us or disturb us. But if you think that the tree is the owner of its own beauty, and you don't attribute to a creator, then the death of the tree, if you love trees, that is for you a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the thinking person, I guess like the way people do not want to see it is another story, probably, like, trying to numb their senses about death and destruction or separation. That is maybe a way that people cope with this trouble. But at the end of the day, I guess that death and separation hits at some point, I guess, even if we try to forget it, sooner or later it probably hits us. Yeah. So I'll switch to the next section, which is actually very similar or continuation of the same meaning. And after that, and it'll be pretty much our last text to cover, and then after that we can take questions if the audience has any. So let me read this, inshallah. Fifth droplet. Also through his light, the motion and movement of the universe and its variations, changes and transformations cease being meaningless, futile, and the playthings of chance, and rise to the level of being Dominical missives, pages inscribed with the signs of creation, and mirrors to the divine names, and the world itself a book of the eternally besought one's wisdom. And, while man's boundless weakness and impotence make him inferior to all other animals, and his reason, the means of transmitting grief, sorrow, and sadness, makes him more wretched, when he is illumined with that light, he rises above all animals and all creatures. Through his illuminated impotence, want, and reason, through entreaty he becomes a petted monarch, and through crying a coy vicegerent of the earth. That is to say, if it was not for his light, the universe and man and all things would be nothing. Yes, certainly such a person is necessary in such a wondrous universe. Otherwise, the universe and firmaments should not be in existence. So I'll come back to this last sentence, which is actually another key point, I imagine. But before that, maybe in understanding this meaning of Dominical missives, a book of the eternally besought one's wisdom. So I guess we kind of touched upon this point about the Iqra, like reading the things, and this is the way we read. Um, but also, I think another thing that I see here is like humankind's state, because like because we talked about reason, we talked about sorrow, sadness that is coming from the reason, which doesn't really exist in other animals. They don't really, they don't really have this comprehensive view. So, in terms of like how to understand what this message brings to individuals, I guess, to like their state in the universe, you know, like what is humankind? I guess that's what I understand. Like, how should I understand like humankind's previous or yeah, I mean transformation from a sad animal to this monarch or this vicegerent of the earth. Maybe I'll give first to Brother Jesmi to talk about this a little bit. What do you think?
Yes, Brother Mustafa. So, foremost, I would like to touch the meaning of the universe. If not, if it wasn't for the Prophet Muhammad SAW, what does it mean? The meaning of the universe is going to nothingness. So, like very Imam Nursi is touching to this topic in many parts of the tafsir. In the 11th word, he's saying, if an incomprehensible book has no author, so it consists of only a meaningless paper. So the whole
Or a
universe
teacher,
without
right?
the teacher, we can consider without a teacher a book. If it is not, the language is not known, so it will be meaningless, and no need to exist for that book. Existence of that book would be meaningless. So just the same, the whole universe gaining the real meaning with the teaching of Prophet Muhammad sallam. Allah SWT has sent him with Quran. So we understand that all the we mentioned it before, but it's better to remember all the meaning of the universe, the manifestation of Asma Ilahiyya. So with the teaching of Prophet Muhammad sallam, everything is understood their real meaning. that they are the messages of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the letters sent to us, the messages from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the Lord of the worlds. So he is as-samad. So he needs nothing, and everything needs him. So he wants to introduce himself, so that he has created the whole universe, so that everything becomes a mirror to his beauties, to his beautiful asma. So everything becomes a mirror for his beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But without knowing that aspect of the mirrorship of everything, so we may not understand that their meanings are turning back to their creators. So it is gaining a meaning with the relation of relating them with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's like an inscription. Imam Nursi is defining very beautifully inscription of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The pen of power has written the whole universe. So if we do not know the language of it, Brother Colin also touched it. So the language of the mystery of the universe. So we can read it, we can understand it with the teaching of Quran, with the light of Prophet Muhammad as-salam he brought to humanity. So we understand that maybe some people are objecting that Hadith Qudsi, lawlak, but the real meaning, if the meaning of it, even it is not Hadith Qudsi, if the meaning, if it is understood, so no objection.
Is it
lawlak? Yeah, لما خلقت الأفلاك. This is Hadith Qudsi. Some sources has shown for this Hadith Qudsi. And the meaning of it, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't create the universe. So when we understand that
like
the real meaning,
God saying this to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right?
This is Hadith Qudsi, the sacred Hadith. So we understand that the real face, the real meaning of the universe is understood with the teaching of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. So with explaining them with the manifestation of Asma Ilahiyya, we understand their real meaning. So they are showing their creator. So
in other words, like if we understand fully what Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's mission means to the universe and how we understand it, we can also understand all those expressions, and that the Hadith Qudsi that you mentioned, it doesn't appear anywhere around like an it's like, because from a untrained eye it could appear like an exaggeration, but like what you're saying is if we understand this message fully and what it means to humanity and universe, it does make sense actually, and it's not really an exaggeration, because you gave the nice example, I guess, about the 11th word, like if there's no teacher for incomprehensible book, what do you need the book for, I guess. So in that sense, well, this is really
maybe
important
just if we consider the quality, the real face of the human beings. So here defined as very mourning, very lamenting being, human beings. They are, although they are created in the most identical patterns, without the light of that light of Iman that Muhammad has brought to humanity, it will be a wretched animal, like lower than the animals, because of the mind given to it. So maybe squeezed in the present time, and thinking the future is nothing, distraction only appears from the future, decaying. So knowing that we are a delicate petted child, like in the universe. So by understanding our weakness, by understanding our impotence, endless impotence, so we become a guest of the creator of the heavens and the earth. So it becomes our mourning becomes a positive quality of us, attracting the mercy of God Almighty, the power of God Almighty. Yes.
Like, and I'll maybe ask you before turning to Brother Colin, like the Dominical missives, you talked about, like, Brother Jasmi, about this, book that is written, that we need to read, and is it only the, like, because we always talk about, like, when we say universe, it is all these, like, aesthetic things, but should we also understand, like, the events that are happening to us as being these letters? I mean, because can we expand that to also, like, the experiences that we are getting? Like, should we see all of those also as messages given to us, or can we expand it to that? No, I mean, not only the universe and its beings, but also the messages. Or I can ask this to Brother Colin as well. Like, is it only the? I mean, a tree is a book, but I mean, and we talked about this in different contexts, I believe. But like, but also sickness is a letter, right? I mean, it's not only. Uh, is that a is that a fitting thing for this section as well? Like, I mean, should we understand these Dominical missives? Because cause when I see the word variations, changes, transformations, it also reminds me of these, like, things happening to people or happening to universe. Um, can we understand it like that too? Maybe
I think
Brother
I,
Colin, you
I
can. Yeah.
think we have to understand it like that.
Mm,
Everything that happens, every atom is a letter,
mm-hmm,
and every particle is a book, you know, and every being is a whole collection of books, is a library, and
mm,
within that, there are more pages and paragraphs, and all of these, kinds of inscriptions and writings are everywhere. And what happens to you, those are also missives. A missive is a letter that someone
yeah,
writes.
yeah.
It's just an archaic word for letter, basically,
Yes, yes.
if anyone was wondering. Um, so if someone smiles at you, now that is also a letter. It's there to be read, to be understood. If someone
Mm-hmm.
swears at you, it's also a letter there to be understood. There is nothing really which is not some kind of inscription, some kind of writing, which is inviting you to respond in some way.
Mm.
So there is nothing which escapes, the divine pen.
Yeah, because, like, there is always this, thinking that, although, when we look at the universe, when we look at, like, nature, right? I mean, it is that, like, trees and animals, they don't really have that much will, but when we encounter something, especially, among humans, right, with some limited willpower, it always appears that, that maybe that those events that are caused by humans would not be, you know, within that mess. But I think we should understand that nothing escapes God's domain, power, right? I mean, because, there is a point that where people can be confused from time to time. Because I just wanted to, um, y- bring that up so that, we can say a word or two about that. Like, when human actors are in play, this is also true, right?
Yeah, it's also true because human acts are also created.
Mm,
So everything that is created is written,
mm-hmm.
and everything that is written is a letter, and a letter deserves a response, or it calls for a response, and it calls for interpretation and reading.
Great. And, this probably touches upon the other topics like divine destiny and things like that, which we can definitely, um, go in our later sessions. But that
Yeah,
is,
that's a difficult one, but yeah, of course, it's all tangled in with divine destiny and decree and all of those things.
yeah, great. And maybe towards the end, I guess, like, human being, like, the how can, reason, I guess we touched upon this a little bit, about, like, death and separation in the last slide. But to open it up a little bit, like, how is, reason the means of transmitting grief and sorrow and sadness, right? I mean, why is it that? Why? I mean, because the reason is also something that is good, where we discover the universe and invent things, and the civilization is pretty much built upon reason. But then why is it a means of transmitting grief, sorrow, and sadness? And how should we understand its transformation? And what is a reason? I mean, what does reason become? And intelligence, reason, what does it become when it's illuminated? How should we understand that last section about that human being and its state? Brother Colin, do you want to comment on that?
I think that reason needs a criterion. Reason also needs to interpret in the name of God, and if it doesn't, then it will interpret in the name of itself, and it can be easily misguided and misled. Reason is only a tool, but if the tool needs to have a criterion and a structure within which to work, and if it has the wrong structure, then it will give you the wrong outcomes.
I see. Nice. And I guess finally, like, we are practically out of time, but I would like to give like a couple minutes to each of you just to expand upon the very last sentence. Yes, certainly such a person is necessary in such a wondrous universe. Otherwise, the universe and firmament should not be in existence. I guess Brother Jasmine touched upon it a little bit. But if you want to share a few words, maybe I'll start maybe from Brother Colin about like that part, what you think about that, and maybe we can finish with Brother Jasmine for any final remarks.
Are you talking now about the Hadith, the Qudsi Hadith, which
Yes.
is one can it's kind of an allusion to that. Yeah, clearly, if we didn't have Quran and we didn't have the message of the Quran, and we should bear in mind that the Quran and the Prophet are inextricably linked.
Yeah.
If we didn't have this, then we wouldn't have the light of enlightenment, which allows us to read the creation in the correct way, in the name of Allah. So reading the creation in the name of God is really the signature message of the Quran, really. Quran isn't there to prove the existence of God, it's to prove the existence of one God and one criterion and one method of interpreting, the correct method of interpreting. And if, this person, of course, is necessary, and they go together.
Yeah.
So the whole reason for existence is that we be told who Allah is.
Yeah.
And the one who tells us who Allah is his messenger, obviously. So yes, of course, such a person is necessary. And without them, nothing would be readable. And in fact, there would be no reason for existence.
Yeah, if the purpose is not understood, there is no purpose to keep it, I guess. Right. Great. Brother Jasmine, any final comments before we finish, inshallah? And then maybe Brother Jasmine, you can finish with a dua, because we didn't really, I mean, if I've missed any questions, I'm sorry, I couldn't see any. And with that, inshallah, then we can, if you have any final remarks, Brother Jasmine, and if not,
Yes,
inshallah, we can
it
finish
comes
with
to
it.
my mind. Yeah, thank Brother Colin also defined very well. So it comes to my mind the ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is defining وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. The human beings and the jinns, they were created, they were sent to this world for worshiping Allah, for knowing Allah, for believing in Allah, the Lord of the universe. So if it weren't for the Prophet Muhammad and his message with Quran, so there wouldn't be a meaning of the creation. So Allah wouldn't create the universe. So he has created the universe for worshiping. So if the human beings are not informed of this, so there wouldn't be any meaning in it. It comes to my mind. So it is, if the Hadith could see, the sacred Hadith is defining this meaning, and quite logical. And Rasulullah and the Quran, as Brother Colin defined, it is together, should be linked together. So Allah SWT is sending his messages with prophets and his final message, his most comprehensive message, and came with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Maybe he is including all the messages, as the Quran is including all the heavenly scriptures Allah SWT has sent. So the Hadith is quite meaningful in its meaning. Yeah, that's all what I want to say.
Okay. I guess there's one question that came in last minute, and I'll ask. Of course, there's a question like his message, Prophet ﷺ's message, came relatively late in the human journey in the universe, and I guess the question is, there was a lengthy period of time before he arrived, right? So how should we understand that in this context? Brother Colin, would you like to give a shot at this?
I think that's another issue, you know. We have to talk about, you know, the evolution of humanity as a collective. I don't mean Darwinian evolution, by the way. I mean development.
Yes.
You know, the collective intellectual development. And this is a huge issue. I don't think it can be, we can take a stab at it, but it'll be a stab in the dark. So I don't think we can answer this in just a few seconds.
Okay, but inshallah we will.
But it's an interesting question, and we could come back to it.
Yes, and understanding the Muhammadan light, right? I mean, his message is probably also important. But yeah, Jazakallah khair. Brother Jazmi, if you have any other remarks, feel free.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can also make a dua.
No, thank you. Inshallah, we can make dua.
Inshallah.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم فهمنا أسرار القرآن كما تحب وترضى. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه، وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أعطنا كل خير وأعذنا من كل شر. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد، طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها، وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين. فاتحة.
Thank you again, all. Jazakallah khair for thank you for your participation and for your listening. And inshallah, we will continue with this topic in next week. And thank you again for coming. Alaikum assalam.
Thank you for all this.